It's all over.
Oh no, I think that good. So that was good.
Hi everyone, welcome. Before I officially call tonight's meeting to order, I just wanted to take a moment to run through the agenda just so we all have a sense of what is before us this evening. I know that Kim is ready in the BevCam booth and we're rolling. Thank you very much, Kim, as always, for providing that public access for those following along. So thank you for being here, as always. So this evening we have two presentations with which we will begin our meeting. We do have one citizen speaker as well signed up to speak. We have 3 posted public hearings, and so I'll say now to those who may be speaking in either of those other lead-in parts, my apologies in advance. The way public hearings work, we have to pause and whatever else is happening at the posted times to open those hearings at their legal times. So we have a 7:15, 7:30, and 8 o'clock public hearing posted. If you're here hoping to speak in one of those, you can sign up on the sheets of paper in front of the city clerk at any time during the meeting. We'll take public speakers in the order that they are signed up. Then we have just some routine business to go through. We'll take a break for some committee work and then we'll come back to finish things up. So with that, I'll officially call to order this regular meeting of the Beverly City Council, Monday, September 18th, 2023, 7 o'clock p.m. Ms. Kent, will you please call the roll?
Bowen? Here. Crowley?
Here.
Feldman?
Here.
Hausman?
Here.
Rand?
Here.
Rotundo?
Here.
St. Hilaire?
Here.
Sweeney?
Here.
And Flowers.
I'm here. Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. Councillor Sweeney, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you very much, Councillor Sweeney, for leading us in the pledge. In the interest of time, I think we'll go right to our first presentation, and that is from the N192 Citizens Advisory Committee for the National Grid Replacement Project. We have 4 members of that advisory committee who are here this evening, I understand, to present. And so I'll invite you to come to the podium either together or one at a time, however works for you. But I understand Tiffany Collins, David Mahood, Karen Fogarty, and Tim Averill are here. Thank you for being here. And so I will turn the floor over to you in whatever order you'd like to present. And I guess while our presenters are coming up to the podium, I want to make a mention for those who may not have followed this process as closely as it was unfolding. This Citizens Advisory Committee was established in conjunction with work with the City Council as part of our conditions on a grant of location with National Grid for this project, and with great thanks and appreciation for these residents and many others who came, were part of that process, and really were great advocates and have continued to put in tremendous amounts of time meeting as an advisory committee with Councilors Rand and Hausman and other councilors in communication as well. But thank you to these residents for the time that they've put in. Ms. Collins, I see that you're going to start us off.
I am. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Tiffany Collins, and I live at 35 Broadway with my family. I'm a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I'm speaking tonight to share my experiences as a direct abutter to the N192 transmission line construction route. When we organized the presentation, we thought it was important to hear experiences of folks living in the active construction parts of the road. In preparation for tonight, I looked back into my notes. The first note I have was dated September 6, 2022, and referenced test pits, one day only, in quotes. The next quote was dated September 16th, 2022. The test pit work continued, and to date, National Grid is still digging on my street. Well, they're on a bit of a break at the moment because they came across some water and sewer issues and are in the process of rerouting the line. It's been nice to have a break and have the equipment, potty included, cleared away for a while, although we do still have very loud plates in the road. However, breaks represent new troubles, disruptions, and sound, and inevitably extend the overall timeline of completion. I need to tell you that noisy does not even begin to describe what happens on my street. It is house-shaking, teeth-chattering, headache-inducing. At night, after the crews leave, the pits are covered with plates that bang together when cars drive over them. We never really get relief from the noise. While the crews try to dampen the banging, it pretty much just doesn't work. They use cold patch, shims, signage, they're trying it all. Inconvenient also does not describe the process of leaving our driveways. This project involves massive equipment. As far as traffic, the street is closed when the construction crews are there, for safety reasons, of course. But you need to check in with the police detail or crew to get out of your driveway, and depending on where the crew is, you'll only be able to take a left or a right for weeks at a time. Imagine trying to get your kids to summer camp or school at 8 a.m. with all this going on, never mind all the other road construction going on at the same time here in the city. Other issues are idling trucks, an increase in rats, and missed trash pickups a few times. One most recently when we were on summer vacation, and the trash sat for another whole week in August because our tenants struggled with navigating the city's website to call for a pickup. On a positive note, we have accommodating construction teams on the street. Our most recent team before the break genuinely tried to quiet the noisy plates and did much better to sweep the debris at night before they leave. Will, from the outreach team, on email and on the hotline, is responsive, and while we may not always like his answers, he picks up the phone. National Grid participated in Downtown Trick or Treat last year with the Civic Association, Ward 2 Civic Association, and will again this year. They also brought an archaeologist who is one of their contractors to Cove School to present to the 4th grade, and we hope to work on more projects like that again this school year. I encourage everyone to walk down to either Broadway or Wellman Street during the day when the crews are working, if you haven't already, to really experience what I'm trying to describe, especially if you live on the route, to prepare yourselves. Thank you.
Dear Beverly City Council, my name is David Mahood, 191 East Lothrop Street. Some of you may recall that I've been an active constituent and an abutter participant since the early stages of this now live project. My commitment to environmental conservation prompted my involvement. As of 2023, we still only have one planet supporting life. I, with a dozen or so other constituents, have been consistently attending the Regional Transmission Committee meetings twice monthly. I want to extend my thanks to Councilors Rand and Hausman for their leadership. I also want to thank Tim, Danielle, and Will from National Grid for their participation in and preparation for the meetings. Now, I've constantly queried the representatives from National Grid about their lack of environmental stewardship as it pertains to the N192 Regional Transmission Project. While they claim that they are only in the distribution of fossil fuels, I've made it clear that they are profiting from fossil fuels and support its infrastructure and usage. To confound matters more, they publicly promote a net zero plan for emissions while spending taxpayer money on fossil fuel lobby organizations like American Gas Association. With the support of our committee, I've drafted 5 specific questions that have been provided to the council. Further, I have no problem whatsoever with upgrading energy transmission and the power grids. We will need these to be able to handle the ever-increasing energy demands. That does not mean that we need to maintain the stronghold that fossil fuels have on our sources of energy. Every credible climate scientist I've interviewed agrees that we need to quickly transition away from fossil fuels. Revered scientist George Woodwell, founder of the Climate Research Center now named after him, put it to me succinctly in 2014. Obviously, at the global level, the first thing is to get rid of fossil fuels immediately, fast as we can. We have to hold fossil fuel companies accountable, and I have sought this from National Grid for the past 3 years. I bring this up at most of our committee meetings, and I have not been satisfied with not only their responses, but their understanding but not only the responses, but their understanding of the gravity of the problem. I've been told that the representatives at our committee meetings are not the appropriate employees to answer our questions on their stewardship. We have been promised a meeting with their environmental team, but have not met with them to date. It seems abundantly clear to me that their corporate net zero plan is not being implemented here in the United States. GHG scope reporting would include our N-192 project, but they are not doing so here, and I suspect nowhere else in Massachusetts. This is one of the reasons that we asked them to purchase carbon offsets for this project. When I asked the corporate liaison why they chose not to offset it, they responded by stating that they would have to charge the ratepayers for this. Keep in mind, National Grid reported record profits during the pandemic. Furthermore, this isn't how carbon offsets work. One must pay to pollute. The representatives from National Grid here in Beverly have promised that their team will meet with our committee and address mine and others' concerns. Lastly, as councilors Hausman and Rand can attest, we have National Grid's attention, and most likely have not been their favorite member of our committee. But if we as citizens of this city and others do not hold the companies profiting from the extraction and distribution of fossil fuels accountable, we will never approach any form of a sustainable planet. So we fight on.
Good evening, Beverly City Council. My name is Karen Fogarty. I live at 169 Lothrop Street in Beverly, and I am a member of the committee and was one of the initial opponents of this project when it was first presented. One of the reasons why I felt like it was very important for us to make a presentation to you is that we have been working as a committee for a year, and it seemed that it was important to let you know what the status of the progress of this project is, because some of you don't represent affected wards, and so you might be less aware of the litany of delays and challenges that have been presented since the project began in earnest last fall. As Tiffany mentioned, and some of the other residents that live in Goat Hill can attest, the work in that area was supposed to take about 2 weeks, and it's not completed now. It is a never-ending process. On Goat Hill, they've encountered substantial challenges with ledge, which is something that we foresaw and mentioned many, many times. And it's an untenable situation for those residents. Because of the challenges there, the project is substantially off of its schedule. National Grid, when they came to this body and advocated for the grant of location and insisted that there really could be no further consideration of other alternatives, stressed many, many times urgency in working on this project, that the redundancy that it would provide was necessary and there could be absolutely no delays in moving forward. So I'm surprised that in spite of the challenges that they've encountered in these particular areas, they've really not added resources to the project in Beverly. They're working with essentially the same number of teams, and they haven't added assets here to expedite this process, both to keep the project on schedule, assuming that there was a level of urgency that was represented to the council at the time, but also to move the project along for the impacted residents. I think it's time for National Grid to come in front of the council and speak to what issues they're dealing with and what they're doing to maintain the original timeline. We have asked for update on the timeline. The fact that we're not on schedule is acknowledged, but there is no stated information about how off schedule we are. I I would imagine that it's quite a bit of time because the delays that they've encountered have really been much longer than they expected. The other challenge that we have is not really understanding the scope of the problems that they're encountering with our city infrastructure. It's being reported to us at our meetings and then third hand or anecdotally from neighbors that when they're working in the road, they are encountering problems with our city infrastructure. And we're concerned about that as well. What is the nature of the impact? What types of corrections are being done? And furthermore, who's responsible for the corrections? Is National Grid responsible for the cost, or is the city of Beverly bearing that? So I would encourage the council to ask National Grid to come back and explain their timeline, and also use whatever authority you have in the grant of location to encourage them to increase the number of assets they have working in the community so that this isn't going to be a year or longer more than what was originally projected. And I think it would also be helpful at the same time to hear from the Public Works Department to have some kind of understanding of what the scope of the impact has been to our city infrastructure. Thank you.
And just before, Mr. Averill, before you come up, I'm just going to, it's 7:15, so I'd like to open our posted public hearing on Order 228.
Order number 228, City of Beverly, order that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, September 18, 2023 at 7:15 PM at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, live stream on BevCam, relative to a National Grid Plan 308-27452, Valley Street, to install electric conduits beginning at a point approximately 258 feet south of the center line of the intersection of Hale Street and Valley Street and continuing approximately 5 feet in a west direction. And this was in the newspaper on September 8th.
Thank you, Ms. Ken. I would entertain a motion so that we can have Mr. Averill and get to hear the full scope of this presentation, to recess this to 7:25, which should give us time to do it before our next hearing.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll recess that to 7:25. We'll reopen it then. And Mr. Averill, and thank you for understanding that brief interruption.
My name is Tim Averill. I'm at 165 Lothrop Street, and I don't have a great deal to add to what my articulate neighbors and committee members have already said, except to once again thank Councilor Rand and Councilor Hausman for what they've done. This has been a very long process, and as many of you know who followed this, I am, among others, raised a lot of questions. And one of the best things that came out of this adversarial process was that you as city's councilors made some addenda to the agreements and made some guarantees that we would be able to be aware of what was going on. What's happened over the last year is that we have developed in an age which has a lot of polarization and people are not talking to each other. We have been talking to Will and Tim from National Grid every 2 weeks, going over what's happening. And that has made us be a little bit like the days when I grew up, when Republicans and Democrats could fight like hell on the floor and then could have a beer afterwards and talk about what's going on. There are good things happening. However, everything that you've heard already tonight still remains true, and we are coming to you as a city council to say, please continue to back us and support us in some of the requests that have been made here, some of the public hearings, because although we have a working relationship, we are not getting the answers that we need. I would certainly second what Karen just said about the need to get a report to the city council about the progress, the timelines, and so on. And we don't have Commissioner Collins at our meetings, but we're having it reported occasionally that it's the city's issue when a sewer line is broken and somebody's basement is flooded with raw sewage. which actually did happen to people. And we have a lot of trust in Commissioner Collins and a lot of respect. And so we would love to have all parties sort of be able to present at the same time. I'm talking as much as possible about the future. This process is going to go on. Most of us have had photographic assessments of our homes, our basements. All of that's been done, and we've had all of our EMF readings to see if, in fact, we've got a lot of electromagnetic radiation. What we are pleading for tonight is that the City Council will hold firm to the protections that they're offering for us, so that if someone's, it was a big surprise to them somehow that there was ledge where we told them there would be ledge. It really should not have been a surprise, but we found that there was, and it does delay things, and they are changing a little bit the route of what they've done. But please have our backs when the time comes to make repairs to damaged basements, when it comes time to measure EMF and to find, if it's unacceptable, to find ways to try to deal with it. So my main appeal is to say what my colleagues have said is absolutely what we've experienced over a year. Please hang with us for the next 2 years, maybe more, and have our backs when it comes to making this right. Because we've accepted the result. We're not getting something along the railroad line. We are not getting some of the things we asked for, but we can make this as good as possible with your support. And I thank you for everything that you did as a city council to make that possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Averill, and thanks also Tiffany Collins, David Mahood, Karen Fogarty. I should have said at the beginning, I would save our thanks for the end. You know, you save applause for that. We'll save the thanks for the collective presentation. But thank you. And I do have a note here. I definitely heard this as a follow-up action item for us as a council to invite National Grid to be here doing a presentation like this, giving us an update. And Ms. Kent, you and I can work together to get that scheduled. But I do have that note. Councilors, we have just a couple minutes before we return to the public hearing, but time for a question or comment if there are any from the council for our presenters. Councilor Rand.
Thank you. Just a quick comment to say thank you for all of the neighborhood people who have been showing up twice a month, and then some people who are sort of new to the project show up when it's in their neighborhood, and it takes a lot of time to, you know, at a time when you could be home and cozy, coming down to the library and kind of talking about an unpleasant topic. So what I've seen, though, is that the working relationship that we do have with the National Grid team is effective, and we're listening, they're listening. We've made like headway on some of the bigger topics, but I would encourage the council to please read that report. It really does kind of hit the main sticking points of the project so far, and if anything, it will help prepare you for how to deal with constituents who will be calling you about this project if they haven't already. So many thanks to the people here tonight from the committee and anyone who's been investing their time in that process. It's been effective and helpful, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rand. And I'll just say, Councilor Rand is referencing Order 240 that will come to under communications from other city officers and boards, which is a written report reflecting some of what we've heard and from our fellow councilors. Councilor Hausman.
Yeah, I want to underscore what Councilor Rand said, and also thank you to all the members of the committee who've been showing up. They've been doing really effective work. It's relatively thankless work, but they're advocating on behalf of the entire community that's part of this route. The other thing in particular that I don't think has been said or emphasized here is that the committee, quote unquote, is not a closed body. It has open membership. Anyone along the route, for that matter, anyone at all, doesn't have to be along the route, but particularly those along the route, as this project approaches your house, your property, your neighborhood, can cycle into participation in the committee and attend these meetings. Certainly this group of four and the others who also show up on a regular basis are sort of the experienced old hands on it, and a lot could be learned from what they've already participated and experienced. But there is always a welcome place at the committee room and the committee meetings for new members as this project moves throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you again to those members of the committee who are here tonight to present. Thank you to all those who have been coming to the meetings and attending, who may not be here but are following along or have been part of the process. Thank you again, Councilors Rand and Houseman, for your continued engagement. Certainly this is impacting wards 2 and 4 very directly, but it really impacts our entire community, and we know that to be true, so thank you. Thank you again, committee members, for your time. That brings us to 7:25, so we'll return to our public hearing on Order 288, which Ms. Kent read for us when we opened the hearing. Mr. Kazadi is here from National Grid. Mr. Kazadi, I'll invite you to the podium for anything you may want to offer on this National Grid plan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Kazadi, and I'm representing National Grid at 44 River Street in Beverly. And for this, we are petitioning to install approximately 5 feet of 1 3-inch conduit from an existing pole, 1825 on Valley Street, to the customer's property.
Thank you, Mr. Kazadi. Any questions or comments from members of the council on this proposed plan? Are there any members of the public who are here hoping to speak in this public hearing on Order 228? This is on National Grid Plan 308-27452 for Valley Street. Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing and refer that back to our Committee on Public Services for further action this evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Kazadi. Before we go to our, actually, no. I'd like to go to our public speaker, our citizen speaker, so that you're not waiting throughout the whole meeting. Jennifer Plowden is here, and we have just the right amount of time. Public speakers can sign up for any regular council meeting and have between 3 and 5 minutes to address the council. So we will have to hold you to the 5, but I'll turn it over to you right now.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, Honorable Council. Thank you for adding time to your agenda tonight to listen to my comments. My name is Jennifer Plowden. I live on 18 Lowell Street, and my husband and I live there with our 2 children who go to Hannah Elementary. We love living in Beverly, and we love being so close to so many things. Part of the joy of that is being able to walk and bike to those things. And I'm really here tonight as a concerned citizen who is really interested in doing what we can to make our city the safest it can be for biking and walking, especially for our kids, and especially given the recent tragic events that have happened in the nearby towns of North Andover and Andover, where a couple of folks, one woman was walking on the sidewalk and got hit and killed by a vehicle, and another was a 5-year-old crossing in the crosswalk with her mother and got hit by a car. So the good news, though, is that the League of American Bicyclists has ranked Massachusetts as the #1 in the country in their bicycle-friendly state report, and they cite several bicycle-friendly actions that the state has taken. Earlier this year, Massachusetts passed the Massachusetts Vulnerable Road Users Laws, which were passed as part of an act to reduce traffic fatalities in an effort to increase roadway safety across the Commonwealth. And the great part of this is that we now have a definition for what vulnerable road users are, which is anyone who's walking, biking, roller skating, using a wheelchair. There's several other things that technically fall under that. But what it really does, which is neat in my opinion, is it gives us something that we can build future policies off of. So we now have that definition in mind. And it also addresses a few key components that I wanted to mention tonight. And I have a handout that I shared with all of you about it if you want to learn more. But the 2 things I want to note are safe passing and safer speed limits. So the law requires that drivers provide a safe passing distance of at least 4 feet when passing vulnerable road users. And motorists are now explicitly allowed to cross the double yellow in order to pass when it's safe to do so and they're adhering to the speed limit. It also clarifies the process for municipalities to create safer roadways with lower speed limits. clarifying the process to alter the speed limit in thickly settled areas from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour, both on state-controlled roads and on the roads they control. And this is an update to the previously implemented Chapter 90, Section 18. And I think this is really important to consider when we think about some of the data from USDOT that tells us that there's a 10% risk of death if you're hit by a car that's traveling at 23 miles per hour, but that quickly goes up to 25% risk if the car is going 32 miles per hour. It goes up to 50% if the car is going 42 miles per hour, and 90% if it's going 58 miles per hour. So that data really shows us that slower streets are safer. And so I'm really excited about the potential that that creates for action at the city level, which is why I wanted to share that with you all tonight. So it has a bunch of other things in it. I won't get into all of that to be respectful of your time, but I just want to emphasize that these laws really are just one step forward in the process to make safer roadways. We're really fortunate to have organizations like Mass Bike and people, volunteers like the Beverly Bike Committee that are really dedicated to that. So I just really am thankful that they exist in Beverly. And I just want to take a minute to thank all of you for everything that you do to invest in our community and encourage you to think about how you might be able to support safer walking and biking. So we're ready to work with you whenever you want to. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Plowden. And I was rushing so we could make sure we got you your time, but I want to mention for anyone following, if you are interested in addressing the city council in our citizen speaker spot, just like Ms. Plowden, you can sign up with the city clerk by 9:30, any regular meeting morning, and there's up to 3 spots, first come, first serve, and you can address the council just as we heard. And I usually say you won't hear us have a lot of back and forth now, but it doesn't mean that it's not something we're listening to, and it will engender further conversation and good work together. So thank you very much for your time. And thanks to, it looks like you have some folks there with you, and so thanks to everyone who came to support you in that as well. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay, and you're also free to go at any point. This brings us to our 7:30 posted public hearing on Order 226. Ms. Kent.
Order number 226, order the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, September 18th at 7:30 PM at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, live on BevCam, relative to a request for a transfer request of $1 million from the Road Resurfacing Fund 056 account into the Road Sidewalk Capital Account Fund 581 to pay for resurfacing when required. And this was published in the newspaper on September 8th.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Mr. Ailes, our City Finance Director, I see you are already at the podium. We'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all on this rainy evening. Before you this evening, you have a transfer request, as Ms. Kent read, for $1 million, which is the first of 3 payments pertaining to the National Grid 115 kV project. We will be getting 3 payments over the course of the next, I believe it's a year to 18 months. And the mechanics to allow us to spend those funds as a city requires council approval. So we take the funds in through our road resurfacing fund, as we do any fees associated with cutting into our roads. And then the city is not allowed to spend that money without a separate action from the city council to allow us to. And this transfer into the road and sidewalk fund would allow us to then spend the money. The intent of the money, obviously, by the terms of the agreement, or the license, I should say, that we granted, or you all granted to National Grid, will be to follow the project through its path and come in behind it and do the road resurfacing that is required as a result of the utility work that they're undertaking. Happy to answer any questions. Commissioner Collins is here as well as I believe some of our administrative staff is here as well, if you have specifics.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ailes. Maybe if I may, our budget analyst, Mr. Perry, would you like to say a few words too, and then I'll open for questions. And I'll say at this time too, any members of the public who might be interested in speaking in this public hearing can sign up on the sheet in front of the city clerk, and we'll take the speakers in the order they're signed up. Mr. Perry.
Madam President, good evening to you and members of the council. It's good to see you all again after my summer hiatus. You have this order before you, order number 226, as I wrote to you very briefly. I do recommend adoption of the proposal of the mayor. A couple of quick comments. As Mr. Ailes indicated, this is pretty much an administrative functionality, if you will. It's certainly not complicated, but it's important from an accounting perspective that you understand that we have to get it into a capital project fund and out of the one it is in order for them not only to expend it, but also it allows us to carry forward the money from one year to fiscal year to the next. And I can almost assure you there'll be projects that will carry over. If we leave it in the existing fund, that would close to free cash, and we don't want that to happen because the money would be not be able to be used for the roads and sidewalks as suggested. So bottom line to it, Madam President, I recommend adoption of the proposal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perry. Counselors, I'll open it up for questions or comments for Mr. Ailes or Mr. Perry. Counselor St. Hilaire, I saw your hand.
Yeah, Mr. Ailes, question for you. Just you mentioned as the first of 3 payments. Could you just remind me what the amounts of the other 2 payments are and when we're set to receive those?
Sure. There were 2 components to the agreement. The first of which we've already dealt with, had to do with reimbursement for details that the city incurs, as well as some engineering work to basically do an independent review of some of the National Grid engineering work. That's already been taken care of. The council made actions last year to put that funds aside, and that will be reimbursed from National Grid. The actual road resurfacing funds, which is your question, is $3.25 million paid over 3 installments.
Do we anticipate any additional funds needed for this project?
So, Mr. Collins is here and he can get into any specifics if we need, but those funds should allow us to close up the streets of the pathway, as well as probably address a degree of other infrastructure needs in the immediate area of the work, such as some other streets along the route, and some enhancements to like sidewalk work and ADA accessibility and things of that nature. Did you want to? I'll let the mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry, I just don't want to make Mr. Ailes answer the questions that he doesn't have to have primary responsibility for either, right? So
He usually does a good job with that.
he really does, so I just want to help him out. So you know that the whole of the route is going to get repaved, curb to curb, right? And then there's some significant sidewalk work that's going to go along with this. You also know that we've got a list of streets that are adjacent to the route that we're hoping to get done as well. And that includes, the route includes part of Weber, but not all. We want to get all of Weber, right? The route includes part of Park Street, but then it turns up Broadway. We were hoping to get Park Street to Federal. We also plan to try to do Bancroft, as it goes by Bancroft on Hale, and Ray and Bowden on either side of Cove Park. And so, the goal is for that money to get us to do all of that. We also are mindful of the fact that it may not extend to all of those spots, and that those sections of roads still need, or those roads still need to get done. So we've had, some of us have had some, one-to-one conversations about that. But that is just for everybody to hear and for the public to hear. That's the goal. That money will do all those things, and if it falls short of that, those sections of road and roads are still high priorities for us to get done in this window of time.
Thank you, Mayor. Counselor St. Hilaire?
I'm okay for now.
Thank you, Counselor. I saw other hands all at the same time down there. Counselor Feldman?
They were mostly asked about timing and payments. So
Okay. Thank you.
I'm set, thanks.
Counselor Sweeney, did I see your hand as well?
The mayor addressed my questions as well. Thank you.
Counselor Houseman?
The mayor knew I was going to ask the question that he just answered.
We've taken care of this whole end of the table. All right. Counselor Rand?
Thank you so much. I have a question. First, I support putting these funds into the proper place so that they don't go back to free cash. But I do have a question maybe with like a real life example. So on Weber Street, that a portion of the sidewalk that was affected by the construction was just reconstructed. So can you, Mr. Mayor or Commissioner Collins, through you, Council President, can you just sort of explain how that fits into this $1 million payment?
Thank you, Counselor.
I'm sorry the committee members from the National Grid Committee aren't still here, but we can direct them to this
Part of the
portion of
BevCam footage,
BevCam.
yes.
Exactly.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins.
Sure, thanks for having me here, and a lot of great discussion around the project tonight. I heard somebody mention timing, so I'll just speak broadly to the issue of timing. Our goal is to try to minimize the impact of the project on the residents along the route, and that's why we were pushing National Grid to get us the money as quickly as possible. There's a lot that goes on when you pave a street. The day the truck shows up and puts down the asphalt, that's the easy day. All of the stuff that leads up to that, the months of work that lead up to that, is what we spend a lot of time and effort on achieving to make sure that we get the highest quality project so that these roads can last a very long time. So we wanted to get the money as quickly as possible because there's a lot we can do with that money, like sidewalks and handicap ramps along the route. Once we get to a certain point of construction, we're not going to do it before they get there with their 80,000-pound excavator. But in a place like, we know in front of the houses on Weber and on Wellman, pretty soon they'll be out of there. And I think our plan in that neighborhood is we'll talk to the neighbors and say, what would be less painful for you? For us to get the sidewalks done right now, or just give you a little bit of break and we'll come back like in the spring and do them. So we plan to ask the neighbors what their preference would be, because they have put up with a lot in that neighborhood. It's been very tough. But there was the electric line brought the construction very close to the homes on Weber. The sidewalk and the curbing had to be removed, and it didn't make sense to me to have the neighbors have to live with a temporary situation for a very long time, so we went and did just that one short stretch of sidewalk and just got it done for them. National Grid is almost done, believe it or not, on Goat Hill, and that would be great. We know that they have to come back later on once the new cable is energized. They have to remove the old cable, so the work in the road is not done, but that would be nothing compared to what they've been through. That'll be relatively easy. So we're just looking forward to getting their world back to as close to normal as quickly as possible. That's why we're looking to start some of this work as soon as we get the money and try to get things glued back together so that as the project progresses, we can actually close it up behind them and we don't have to wait, because I know National Grid had at one point expressed a desire to have us wait until they're done with everything, but there's a lot we can do and save that very last step of putting down the pavement, the final coat of pavement at the end, until they're complete, and we can just very quickly put the project to bed rather than extend it for another 18 months of road construction after the people get done with 18 months or 2 years of conduit construction. So, make sense?
Councilor Wren, you have a follow-up.
Just a quick follow-up. So is the example on Weber, which I totally understand why that sidewalk was completed, and thank you. Is that an example of what this $1 million can be used for as we go? Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
we don't have enough. The 3 1/4 is not enough to rebuild everything everywhere. But in some of those places, like on Weber and Wellman, they started very intentionally with the absolutely hardest place on the job to start. They knew that was going to be the most difficult. It's 12-inch high-pressure gas, existing 115 kV line. There's plus the low-pressure gas, the water, the sewer, the drain, all these things to work around. It's an incredibly difficult street to work in. And yes, they absolutely knew they were going to be in some ridiculously hard rock. And its project is designed to be deep to avoid all these utilities. So they knew it was going to be disruptive right from the get-go.
Thank you. I think it's exceeded everyone's expectations.
Certainly is.
Thanks.
In a not great way.
In a not great way, yeah.
Councilor Bowen, and then I saw Councilor St. Hilaire's hand.
Great, thank you. So I think one programmatic question, one financial question, so they may go to different members of the administration. On the programmatic side, just to get expectations really clear, given that this project is very extended, impacts a lot of people, if you can just talk a little bit more about sort of what people can expect to happen during and after National Grid's phase of the work, Are we still looking at the sort of curb to curve paving being after the full project is done, but the roads being in better condition by then, or just to kind of manage
I think it
expectations?
depends on the location. You can see on Broadway, it was.
The other kind of piece of that, sorry, before the financial question, is just given that we're getting the money in tranches and we're trying to get ahead of things, when can we expect to, like, what are reasonable check-in points with the council about how far that $1 million has stretched by a certain point in terms of how many sidewalks or streets we're able to get to? Because I think I certainly would appreciate knowing if it's not going as far as we expected or if it's going further than we expected while we're still in it.
Yeah, mostly what's going to affect the, how far we get is what the price of liquid asphalt does over the next 18 months or 2 years. It's fluctuated wildly, but that has somewhat of a subtle impact on the actual price of paving, because there's only 4% liquid asphalt in paving, so it doesn't directly correlate to the price of liquid asphalt, but so we don't expect it to get dramatically crazy. We've seen some really crazy economy over the last few years, and supply chain crisis and all that stuff. And the prices of our paving in place have remained relatively stable, so predictable for us. So we expect to be able to we know we're going to get the whole route done. If we run short, National Grid has already committed to give us more money if we can't get the route done. So that is a guarantee. We're going to get the entire route done. What else we can get done beyond that remains to be seen. So we need to get, I don't think we're going to know definitively for 18 months how much we might have left over, because we need to get a lot of work done and see what the actual cost of that work's going to be at the time, and then we'll have an idea of how much contingency we have left over, because we do build in a contingency. We don't like to go over. You don't like us to go over, so we try to build in a little bit of contingency at the beginning to make sure that we have enough money at the end.
So I guess thank you for that. And my financial question is just where the two accounts are at right now in terms of scale, and is it easy enough to track, say, when we've expended half of this $1 million, if we wanted to have a check-in point to know
I can tell you that,
where
definitely.
this dedicated amount is?
We can tell you at any time, any day, what the balance is. That's easy. We track it from, we track it internally on a spreadsheet, and then the accounting system knows, we may have actually a better idea because we have not, we know what the commitments are that we've made. We know what bills haven't come in yet, so, or maybe have been processed through Munis, so we might have a more real-time accounting of it, but it's only, we pay every week, so, Munis is only a week or two behind. It's not dramatic, so that's easy.
Thank you, Counselor.
Sorry, if I may just, that's great, but is there actually a balance for those accounts as of now, sort of before this transfer? It wasn't clear, that was part of my question.
Yeah, it was not, thank you.
Yeah, so now keep in mind, the RSR account is road resurface account, takes in small fees, medium-sized fees every time there's a cut into the road, depending upon the quality of the road. Commissioner Collins and his team have built a structured system so that if the road's relatively new, the fee's a little bit more. If the road's really in junk condition, then the fee is significantly less. So in total, aside from this $1 million that we're looking to transfer, there would be 200,000 left. I'm rounding, obviously, but it'd be about that. You may recall about three or 4 years ago, City Council authorized scooping all of the remaining funds out, putting it into the road and sidewalk. So in the future, we'll be able to do that as well when the time suits. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and the roads and sidewalks side, the general scale of that at the moment.
Yeah, so just to give a sense for the FY24 funding, the City Council appropriated 2.7 million, 600 in free cash before June 30th, as well as 2.1 in the budget. So 2.7 in city money. Chapter 90 is 1,046,000. And then we had an earmark of 200,000 for work on Elliott Street. So those all combined is just a hair under $4 million. That's what we have to work with this fiscal year. And as you know, through some of your meetings with Commissioner Collins and his team, some of those projects get kind of plugged into that figure. Obviously, there's some contingency involved, and we try to kind of schedule out projects into the coming construction seasons to use those funds to repave roads and sidewalks. Is that more thorough answer?
Yes, partially. So that's a sort of inflows for this year, which is a little different than the balance snapshot of sort of how big is that account at the moment. Understanding that a lot of the money that may be in that account is committed to projects that have already begun.
Yeah, and the reason I answered it that way is because if I were to take a snapshot in the accounting system, it's very misleading because you've got carry forwards in cash from previous years. You've got receivables from Chapter 90 that haven't hit the account yet. You've got transfers that are accounting mechanisms that we do quarterly that haven't quite cleared the books yet. And you've got obligations where cash hasn't come out of the account yet, but you've obligated the funds. So there's many different variables moving all at the same time. So that's why I try to focus on, in a given year, what the typical volume of expenditures and revenue is, which is about the $4 million mark. Okay.
So we have about 10 minutes left before we'd have to recess the next one. I believe we can do this one in the amount of time we have left, so I'm committed to that. Councillor St. Hilaire.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Perry. My eyes lit up when I saw $1 million going to roads and sidewalks and thinking of all the things we could do with that. Does this have to be dedicated to this project? Is there ways to guarantee that? When I hear about leftover money and maybe we'll do the rest of this road or that road, is there money that will be left aside, and what could we do with that?
To my understanding, there'll be no money left aside. If there is, the commissioner, I defer to him, but I think he said if there was some money left over, they'd try to do some of the side roads, if I'm correct on that. I don't want to speak for him. But my expectation is that they're going to chew up all this money. I don't expect money left over. Pardon me?
Could they be any side road?
I defer to the commissioner.
The intent of the agreement with the city and National Grid was that these would be roads that were impacted by the construction project, so immediately adjacent to, or detours that we sent traffic down, people impacted by the route. So there won't be, not like Hale Street kind of money that's going to be left over. It's more like, as the mayor pointed out, Bancroft and things like that, small.
There are other areas that National Grid has torn up across the city as well that could be, I was just thinking creatively if this money could be used for something else.
Sure, this is a very specific funding source tied, so National Grid had to have assurance from us that it would be spent basically on this project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Houseman.
This is a question for Mr. Collins, I believe, as well. Karen Fogarty raised an interesting question. I'll do my best to try to replicate her question, which is, when National Grid is in the streets and it somehow impacts existing city infrastructure, which then has to be repaired, who picks up the cost for that repair? Is that covered by National Grid?
Yeah.
It
It always is.
That's separate from the $3 million and change.
Yep, it's part of the project. There's a $1 billion+ project going through Beverly, and it's all in that. We participate anytime it's construction, things are going to break. That's just, an absolute certainty. We actively participate in the repairs because all I care about is getting it repaired for our customers as quickly as possible. I'm not there to place blame on who broke it and why it broke. We just want, so National Grid stays there. Their contractor, McCourt, has been great to work with, and we work hand in hand with them to make sure that it gets repaired as quickly as possible. We're better at it than they are because that's what we do. They're better at putting conduit in the ground than we are because that's what they do. So we, it is 100% borne by the project cost. If we use parts, they replace them. So it's been good to work with, but we do participate in the repair just to make sure it's done quickly. seen other projects where the community doesn't participate, and you could have a customer out of service for hours and hours and hours, and we just don't want that to happen here.
So there's a system in
Had a
the...
follow-up, Counselor.
I'm sorry.
Did you have a follow-up?
I do have a follow-up, if I may, Council
You
President.
may, but I do want to hold us, I do think we can get this one done in the time we have, given that we're really just transferring money that we wanted from National Grid to another fund. So please follow up, but let's keep an eye on the time, all of us, please.
I'll leave my question aside. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there members of the public who wish to speak in this public hearing? Counselor Husband, you have 5 more minutes if you want to ask your question.
No, that's okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. So given that, I will close this public hearing and refer it back to the Subcommittee on Finance and Property for further action this evening. I'd entertain a motion to take our agenda out of order briefly to go to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Kent, if you could give us an introduction to the first order here, and then I believe, Mr. Mayor, you have something you'd like to present.
Can I ask a favor?
You could ask.
You got 5 minutes. This is probably going to take about 10, all told. You want to start it?
Well,
You want to do other things?
we could go ahead and start, because either way, I'll have to open the 8 o'clock hearing, and then we can give it a
Recess.
5-minute recess.
Okay, thanks.
So why don't we have Ms. Kent go to order 230 to introduce it, and then bring you up.
Order number 230, a letter from the mayor sharing the news that Michael P. Collins, Commissioner of Public Services and Engineering, has been awarded the 223 Professional Manager of the Year in Public Works Emergency Management by the American Public Works Association.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Mr. Mayor, I understand that you would like to elaborate on that, or would you like us just to receive that letter and place it on file to begin with?
I don't want to slight Commissioner Collins, and it's going to take 10 minutes.
All right.
So could we get to
Sure.
8:01 and do it then?
Let's receive that. Well,
Yeah.
I'll take a motion to receive order 230 and place it on file.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Kent, why don't we continue on with communications from His Honor the Mayor then?
Order number 231, the Committee on Legal, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Ms. Laura Meisenhelter, 50 Rantoul Street, Unit 106S, Beverly, to serve as alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Her term is to be effective until August 1st, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 232, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Mr. Raymond Bouchard, 11 Elizabeth Ave, Beverly, and Mr. Bruce McDonald, 8 Pillow Lace Lane, Beverly, to serve on the Permanent Building Commission. This term is to be effective until September 30th, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 233, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Mr. Jared Contrada, Associate Planner for the City of Beverly, to serve as the Planning Department representative on the Design Review Board. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 234, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby reappoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Mr. Kevin Hoban, 6 Gardner Street, and Miss Joan Fairbank, 11 Liberty Street, to serve as trustees of the David Lynch Parks Fund. Their terms are to be effective from September 30th, 2023 until September 30th, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 235, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby reappoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Douglas Viglato, 9 Deer Haven Road, Beverly, to serve as constable in the City of Beverly for the express purpose of serving civil process. Attached is Mr. Viglato's application, which has been approved by Police Chief John LaLatcher, and this term will be effective until September 18, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs. Thank you. Before we open the 8 o'clock hearing, and then we'll recess it just briefly for the purpose of allowing the mayor some time to make a brief presentation. I wanted to take a moment to recognize some of the other city staff who are in the room. Some we've heard from in our public hearings already, but I apologize for not having done this yet. This is the first good moment that's presented itself. So Police Chief John Lasher, thank you for being here with us. Of course, Mayor Cahill is here in the room with us as well. Assistant City Solicitor Beth Oldmixon and Assistant City Solicitor Jesse Dole are both here with us. Thank you. Our City Planner Darlene Nguyen is here as well. Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. As we heard in our public hearing, our DPS Commissioner Mike Collins is here. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Fire Chief Peter O'Connor also here with us this evening. Thank you, Chief O'Connor. Of course, our City Finance Director, Mr. Brian Ailes, we've heard from in our public hearing, as well as our City Budget Analyst, Mr. Jerry Perry, and also Chief of Staff Jocelyn Rell-Kursker is also here with us this evening. Did I miss city staff? Okay. Thank you. That brings us, did I miss something? Okay, thank you. That brings us to 8 o'clock, so we will reopen our posted 8 o'clock public hearing on Order 184. This is a public hearing that was continued, was recessed to tonight's meeting from our prior regular meeting. And so we're picking that up this evening. Yep. I told you didn't have to read it.
Yeah, you did.
So I would entertain a motion now to recess this. Let's recess it to 8:15, if you would, counselors. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. So we'll pick that back up at 8:15. Any members of the public who wish to speak in that public hearing, the sign-up sheet is here in front of Ms. Kent. You can sign up at any point, and we will go back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam President, thank you so much. I really appreciate accommodating. Knowing Commissioner Collins, he probably would have been fine with you saying you didn't have time. He likes to keep the focus on the work and not on himself. But I really am excited to share this news that Commissioner Collins has been honored by his peers. And so I'm going to read this proclamation. I want to maybe ask one or two folks to get their cameras ready so we can have a picture of Commissioner Collins accepting this when the time comes in a few minutes. Proclamation, whereas, and this is jointly issued by you, city councilors, and me, the mayor, to Commissioner Collins. Whereas Commissioner Michael P. Collins has overseen the City of Beverly's Department of Public Services and Engineering for the past 23 years, providing exemplary service, managing nearly 100 staff and dozens of municipal projects and processes. And whereas Commissioner Collins has worked tirelessly for the public good, crediting his family for his commitment to public service through the strong examples they set working as an EMT, a fire chief, emergency dispatchers, and with the United States Navy. And whereas Commissioner Collins has overseen all capital building projects during his tenure, including our new police station and our new Beverly Middle School, he spearheaded the City of Beverly's first hazard mitigation plan. He was instrumental in making Beverly one of the first green communities in Massachusetts, and he modernized the technology needed to provide first-class services to our community. And whereas Commissioner Collins is a member of Massachusetts Task Force 1, one of 28 FEMA urban search and rescue teams in the United States, he has completed thousands of hours of training to serve as both a structures specialist and a heavy equipment and rigging specialist. He deployed with Mass Task Force 1 to Florida in response to Hurricane Ian in 2022 and to Vermont in response to the severe flooding recently in 2023. And whereas appointed by former Governor Charles Baker, Commissioner Collins excuse me, Commissioner Collins is the Northeast Region's Coastal Community Representative on the 17-member Seaport Economic Council. He serves on the Essex County Highway Association in various leadership roles and as a mentor, and he is also active in the New England chapter of the American Public Works Association. And whereas his tireless work, leadership, and dedication to public services and public safety have culminated in Michael P. Collins, Beverly's Commissioner of Public Services and Engineering, being awarded the 2023 Professional Manager of the Year in Public Works Emergency Management by the American Public Works Association. And whereas the City of Beverly is incredibly fortunate to have such a talented, dedicated, experienced professional leading an integral department in our community, his wealth of historical knowledge in the inner workings of our city is second to none. Now, therefore, please join us in congratulating Commissioner Michael P. Collins on his achievements and much-deserved national recognition by the American Public Works Association. We are grateful for his stewardship and accomplishments in helping make the city of Beverly a safe, innovative, and desirable world-class community on the North Shore. Commissioner Collins?
Commissioner, would you like to? You do. Would you like to say a few words, Commissioner Collins?
No,
And congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate the recognition. Certainly not necessary. You know, we do this because we love to do it. I'm lucky to have been the great-grandson of Irish immigrants who came here, raised 3 boys who all 3 went into public service, an engineer, my grandfather, a doctor, and a policeman, police officer. So starts right there. As soon as they got to the country, hit the ground running, and we haven't stopped since. So 3rd-generation engineer, and lucky to be in the job I'm in, lucky to be in the city I'm in, lucky to work with such outstanding professionals. Enjoy what I do. At the core of that, why we're all here is to help people, and I'm privileged to be able to do that. And the job has led me to other ways to help people, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for those opportunities, and I appreciate the recognition tonight.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Councilors, I would entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess if folks would like to have a moment to congratulate the commissioner and thank him for his work.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Take a 5-minute recess and we'll be back. everyone. Welcome back, everyone.
Oh, I go in and out of it.
Welcome back, everyone. We're back from recess. Congratulations again to Commissioner Collins on that well-deserved recognition, and thank you to Mayor Cahill for bringing that proclamation so that we could spend some time to properly recognize that accomplishment, that achievement of Commissioner Collins. So we are now picking up by reopening our now 8:15 public hearing. This is on Order 184, proposed amendments to the Beverly zoning ordinance concerning accessory dwelling units, definitions regarding transient lodging, bed and breakfast, and other minor clarifications. This is continued from the joint public hearing held with the planning board at our September 5th meeting. And counselors, as you recall, and for members of the public who are following along, this public hearing now is open here in City Council. The planning board will also continue their public hearing at their October 3rd meeting, and then we will have the opportunity as a council to receive recommendations from the planning board following the closing of their public hearing. What I'd like to do tonight is, Ms. Nguyen, is there anything else that you wanted to add or say tonight on this topic? We'll start there and then go to members of the public next.
Thank you. No, I do not have anything specific to add at this time for questions and clarifications.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Nguyen. So we will go right to members of the public then first, and then come back around to members of the council. So we'll begin with Diantha. You are signed up first. Would you like to come up to the podium? And if you would, begin with your name and address for the record. And then you have up to 3 minutes to address us.
Pardon for my time.
Councilor Rotundo's without his fancy clock tonight, but
fancy time today.
we'll make do with some kind of song that his phone will play, if that's okay with you.
I'm Diantha Potasan. I live on Corning Street in Beverly, and I'm here tonight both as a resident and as a member of ECHO. Following the ADU hearing on September 5th, several of us at ECHO undertook some research related to concerns that we heard brought up by the counselors, the planning board members that have been here, and by some of the residents. Massachusetts has at least 42 communities that allow ADUs. Most of these communities see less than 4 units built per year. Will ADUs solve our housing issues? No, they won't. We've all heard the saying, to the world you may be but one person, but to one person you may be the world. Think for a moment of an elderly neighbor living in a large home on a fixed income and struggling to age in place and keep up with maintenance. This ordinance has the ability to offer the world to that homeowner and to whomever they select to share their property. The excitement of the ADU for me isn't just how these two sets of people will find a way to remain in Beverly, but of what type of relationships will be born from coming together to help each other with a basic human right, adequate housing. It brings a smile to my face when I think of the possibilities, fostering community, one property at a time. Who are we at ECHO? We are members of various community organizations that work every day to meet the needs in our community. Our hope is that ADUs will offer an economical option for many of our Beverly residents. Reality says it will be a stretch to see more than 6 in a year. The costs alone and the likelihood that owners will need a loan to complete construction will turn away many. So why make it even more difficult for these 6? We encourage you to follow the lead of the other communities in Massachusetts and allow all homeowners who want to create an ADU the right to at least ask. Not one of the community's ECHO research denies a non-conforming property owner from making a request for variance or special permit. Similarly, following the lead of our neighboring communities, we support any requirement for off-street parking being simplified. Communities that required off-street parking almost unanimously left it to the owner to determine the best way to park off-street. It seems common sense for Beverly to follow suit and retain freedom for homeowners to set up parking off-street that works for their property. We appreciate how seriously you as council members are taking the time to consider this process, and we appreciate that you're even considering the possibility of changes now, so that it'll pass the right way the first time. And if the city council would like to see ECHO's research, I can forward this to the city clerk for distribution, if you would like that. Yes?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. The next citizen speaker who is signed up for the public hearing is Kevin Barry. So similarly, if you would begin with your name and address for the record, and then you also have up to 3 minutes to go ahead and address the council. Thank you.
I'm Kevin Barry. I live at 12 West Beach Lane in Beverly. Council President Flowers, members of the City Council, thanks for the opportunity to speak at this public hearing about accessory dwelling units. My prepared remarks will take less than 3 minutes. I've lived in Beverly for almost 29 years. I've been to many Planning Board and Conservation Commission meetings over the past 2 decades, and I'm generally familiar with the city guidelines and codes. I recently contacted my ward councilor, Matt St. Hilaire, to learn more about this hearing after reading the front page headline in the Salem News about the discussion of ADUs at the September 5th meeting. Some of the comments from that coverage surprised and concerned me. Namely, 55% of Beverly lots could accommodate an ADU. I read through the materials for this meeting, including a letter from Will Cosmas, who is also a member of the Beverly Zoning Board of Appeals, in support of changing the zoning requirements for ADUs. In that letter, Will cites, and I quote, robust community engagement, focus groups, and public forums to arrive at his recommendations to the city. I contacted 8 of my neighbors a few days ago. They are all taxpayers with a stake in these proposed changes, and none had heard anything about any public discussion about ADUs or significant changes to zoning. I've not heard or seen anything about any public forums or focus groups relating to tonight's topic. In fact, as noted in his letter, Will lives on Washington Street. His home and his entire neighborhood would be unimpacted by any changes, as the lots are R6 and don't have any space for detached units. There's much the city can learn from the 42 towns and cities in Massachusetts that currently allow ADUs. I have a few specific questions and issues which concern me and my neighbors, and I will ask them so the City Council better understands our concerns. Are there minimum lot size requirements? A 30-foot height maximum seems irrational for a 1,000-square-foot structure. How would the city police or enforce these units from becoming Airbnb lodging? How will the city determine appropriate and compatible architectural style with the principal building on the property? Having the sole front setback requirement only behind the front edge of the primary structure is essentially allowing the unit to be in the front yard as viewed from the street. Are existing non-conforming lots eligible for ADUs? How many units does the planning department anticipate would be built if the proposed changes go through? What impact would these new units have on rents in the area? These are all logical, rational questions that need to be fully vetted and answered. I'm for detached ADUs if done in a responsible way. I've covered the housing industry professionally for the past 27 years on a national basis, and I'm well aware of the housing shortage in this country and in Massachusetts. However, the City Council owes it to the taxpayers and homeowners of Beverly for an open debate and robust discussion about these proposed changes. Despite some of the prior comments, this has not happened. As Commissioner Collins said, we're all lucky to be living in Beverly, and I feel blessed. Thanks for your attention to this important matter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barry. Are there other members of the public who did not get to sign up but are here tonight hoping to speak in this public hearing? Okay. Seeing none for now, I will open this up for conversation with members of the council. And Ms. Nguyen, I hope it's okay to say there are 2 questions that sort of came up for the council last time that I think would be particularly helpful for our planning department to have a sense of the council's thoughts about the tandem parking and the variance question. And so conversation and comments and questions from Ms. Nguyen on anything in the proposed ordinance is of course on the table, but I understand that that would be particularly helpful for our planning department as they work through this process. So members of the council, questions or comments? Councilor Rand.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment in that vein that I've been just thinking a lot about the tandem parking requirement in question, and I would be open to amending that section of the, what's currently proposed. Just wanted to share that, if that's helpful to the council and Ms. Nguyen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rand. Councilor Houseman.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it if Mr. Barry's comments could be submitted to the city clerk, and we could get some response to some of his questions from Ms. Nguyen. And if you would like to respond to some of the questions this evening, I think that would be informative and helpful for us.
Thank you, Councilor Houseman. Ms. Nguyen and Ms. Kent was just mentioning that Ms. Dixon will make sure that those will be in the minutes, but Mr. Barry, if you have a written copy of your public comment and you wouldn't mind sharing it with our city clerk, Ms. Kent, that can be disseminated to the councilors. Ms. Nguyen.
Did you want me to do that now? I was not able to write them all down. Perhaps they can be repeated. But was there particular comments that you wanted a response to?
Councilor St. Hilaire.
I was going to follow up on several of them if we want to start there.
Sure, and then Ms. Nguyen, if there's any that you would like to help.
So I think, first off, at the last meeting, I think you estimated roughly 5 new units a year over 10 years is kind of what you were anticipating. And Mr. Barry, that was one of the follow-ups in terms of what their recommendation was of how this would impact Beverly. But I did have a question and follow up on the Airbnb piece, because this is something that has been an issue, I think, for all of us over the last couple of years. How does this change that situation? What does this give the city in terms of enforcement capabilities?
So specifically as it relates to ADUs, there's a provision in the new ADU ordinance that short-term rentals are not permitted. Transient lodging is not permitted. There is a piece of this ordinance that clarifies the definition of transient lodging. Transient lodging, short-term rentals are not permitted currently in the city of Beverly at all. They have been enforced when we're made aware of them. But we did add a definition we added clarification to the definition of transient lodging, so that's more clear going forward.
But I think certainly to Mr. Barry's point, adding more ADUs gives more Airbnb type opportunities, I would say.
They're long-term rentals. They're not meant to be short-term rentals.
How will the city monitor that?
It would be monitored the same way we monitor enforcement. So with reporting, with access, and with the building department monitoring these, they have to. Jesse's going to.
I was going to say, it seems like one of our assistant solicitors, Mr. Jesse Dole, do you have
good evening.
Anything to weigh in on here?
Yes, Jesse Dole for the solicitor's office. Murphy's Law, I'm going to start coughing as soon as I come to the microphone. Transient lodging has never been allowed. Well, I can't speak for when that was originally drafted, but at least since the time that Airbnbs became a thing, transient lodging has not been allowed under our zoning ordinance. It exists in the existing definition of a dwelling and a dwelling unit. They are not considered, transient lodging is not to be considered a dwelling or a dwelling unit. So what we have done is to bolster the existing prohibition on short-term rentals by adding a further definition. The definition of transient lodging isn't some high-tech definition, but we just felt it was prudent to firm up what the definition of transient lodging is. The existing definitions of a dwelling unit do speak about permanent provisions of living. That is not a short-term rental. Permanent is a home you own. It's an apartment you rent. So what we did was just, like I said, we wanted to bolster the existing prohibition by defining that, giving it that 30-day term. As far as violations of that, zoning is enforced by the zoning enforcement officer, which is Jim Butler, the director of municipal inspections. And similar to any zoning violation that may arise from a use of a property, he is the enforcement officer and has enforcement powers to address those. So obviously a violation of zoning requires someone to report it to the zoning enforcement officer. Which is what we've done. What we've done with Airbnbs that we have been at least attempted to obtain firm information about being used as an Airbnb. But obviously, we need to find out if someone is using either under the existing zoning ordinances, or if these amendments are approved, we need to know that it's being used that way, and then it's reported to Jim Butler, and then he uses his enforcement authority as the zoning enforcement officer. So, similar to somebody using a use that's not permitted within a district, or something that's constructed doesn't comply with the requirements of that district, this is a similar, an Airbnb transient lodging is a similar issue.
Thank
Do you have a follow-up, Counselor?
I'm okay for now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, if I could share a couple points. We have had two particularly challenging addresses that have been used as Airbnbs, one in Ward 4, one in Ward 6, and it took our attention, but we were able to, in each instance, really let those owners know that they had no right to do so, and we've seen the use of those two particular properties as Airbnbs stop, and that was accomplished by our team with less clarity and less clear language on the book. So this should help in that sense. And in coming forward with a proposal that no leases can be for fewer than 30 days, I wanted to push further north of that number, but the more we looked into it, the more we came to the conclusion that that was the number that we knew would hold up, that we had confidence would hold up to any constitutional challenge. So that's where we landed in terms of the definition of forbidden, prohibited short-term rentals. It'd be anything fewer than 30 days. You go back to some of the things that we're looking to require in this proposal, including, I think, very critically, owner-occupied only, right? Nobody's going to try to utilize this in an income property-only kind of way. This is not why this is even on the table. So I think those things, the intent, the spirit, the way things have been laid out, I think will help in that direction. So thanks.
Just want to say I appreciate that answer, and also working with the city on that Ward 6 issue. I appreciate all your work, and I know that was challenging, which is why I think it's important that we have the language in here that we do. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Houseman, did you have a follow-up? I couldn't tell if your hand was up.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear from Ms. Nguyen on the subject of whether non-conforming dwellings could avail themselves of, non-conforming lots or dwellings could avail themselves of this ordinance potentially by having relief, seeking relief through the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Ms. Nguyen, thank you, Counselor. Okay. Or
I'm going to
Mr.
say
Mayor.
something very simple because she's the expert. I just want you to know we've been having this conversation during the course of the day today. It seems that a week ago Tuesday to today happened really quickly. So we need more time with that question. As you know, the proposal before you doesn't allow for a variance pathway. And, so we're looking at how we might create language that would be nuanced enough to allow for a consideration, but we really do continue to have those concerns about non-conforming uses that just shouldn't be increased for the, in terms of protecting a neighbor who's right there on a lot line or just next door. So, Ms. Nguyen is the expert in planning, so I'm going to stop there. But just so you know, we need a little more time with that whole conversation if, in fact, there's an ability to do something different than the language before you. Okay.
Counselor Houseman.
Thanks.
Thank you. I would just say that I'd certainly be interested in looking at language like that. As you know, I have passing familiarization with the Zoning Board of Appeals and the kinds of decision-making around what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, weighing the impact on the neighborhood, hearing from neighbors, is sort of the bread and butter of what the Zoning Board of Appeals does at all times. So I would think that this kind of proposal would certainly find a place that would be appropriate before the zoning board. So I'd be interested in seeing what language you might come up with. I mean, I think to Mr. Barry's point, scale and design is important in terms of the allowable height of one of these kinds of units. And so I take his point that of concern about that, but that is also part of what the Zoning Board of Appeals deals with on an ongoing basis monthly. So, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Wynn?
I think were you offering your assistance to help craft something? Is that what I heard you say? Sorry. I think some suggestions were made at the last meeting, and additionally, we've done additional research too. There are, I think it was mentioned, kind of various ways to slice the apple in terms of looking at what actually are we looking to protect, like the mayor said, in terms of the abutters' rights, and does it relate only to setbacks? Can we allow variance just to certain rear and side setbacks, or is it a variance? Is it a special permit? Is it planning board? Is it zoning board? I kind of echo. I see your point regarding the zoning board of appeals. Many of the other communities that we researched have a special permit rather than a variance for that, to kind of cover that piece. Difference being special permits, as we always say, is something we anticipate being allowed, but under certain criteria, where a variance you have to prove a hardship. So they are a little bit different. Let's see. The other one I think we talked about was, maybe a variance for height specifically, or just certain dimensional requirements, but maybe you can't get a variance for everything, or under certain conditions, or certain nonconformities may not be eligible for variance. So that's why there's different ways to slice the apple. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. We could, we like to have a zoning ordinance that is easy to understand and interpret and use. And so that's why we need a little bit more time to kind of craft something that, if that's the way that sounds like, potentially that the council might want to go, we could come up with some options and say, that's how we would try to enact that amendment to the ordinance that we suggested and go from there.
Thank you, Ms. Wynn.
Thank you.
Were there other questions of Mr. Barry that I wanted to address? I know we kind of jumped over that, or that you wanted me to address.
Councilor St. Hilaire, and then we'll come back to you, Councilor Sweeney. I know you were
Maximum height. I see in the ordinance change, there's a number of different maximum heights throughout it, including up to 35 feet, it looks like, in some cases. Could you talk about how you came to that? Yeah, I guess why it varies, and kind of how you came to 35 feet?
I will need to look and see where it
I
varies.
did look at other communities, and it looked like most were at 25 feet that I could see.
I think 35 feet, honestly, is the existing height, so of most of those residential height allowance in those residential districts. We do say that it needs to be a building that appears smaller, but rather than kind of picking a number out of a hat, we stuck with 35 feet to keep it simple.
I'm going to go to Councilor. Is it a follow-up to
It's
that?
a clarifying question to
please.
that.
Sorry, Councilor Sweeney. Thank you for your
that's
patience.
fine.
Okay,
I'm on.
Councilor
Thank you,
Foster.
sorry. It's just so I understand, if you're saying at 35 feet, is that saying, because I know several of the homes that are ranches, is that you're building, the accessory dwelling unit could be another floor added on top to achieve 35 feet for the whole structure? Or is it that the unit itself can be built up to 35 feet?
The height limit for 35 feet relates to the detached units. So that would be the accessory dwelling unit detached shall not be taller than the principal dwelling and shall not exceed 35 feet. So perhaps a principal dwelling might be taller than 35 feet in some situations. So we wanted to actually add that and 35 feet just to make sure that 35 feet was the absolute maximum. But at a minimum, it has to be less height than the primary building. If the primary building is 35 feet, it could be 34 feet. So that's kind of why we added that in there. I'm trying to see if there was another area where we put height in. In an attached, I don't think we specified a height for an attached building. It would have to comply, so that'd be in the primary building, it would have to comply with the existing zoning ordinance already. So if you have room to add an extra story for a ranch and make that your ADU, you could do that if the height allowed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Feldman. Councillor Sweeney, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question for Ms. Nguyen about the tandem parking requirement, and it actually pertains to other multifamily districts in the city. Is tandem parking allowed in multifamily districts in the city?
We only allow tandem parking in the city. We do allow it in other multifamily districts. The 2 tandem spaces have to be assigned to the same unit.
Okay.
So
And-
it's to avoid the shifting of cars, right? So if you
Yes.
avoid your neighbor parking you in, so.
And to that point, I know that multiple folks have flagged, so I appreciate that answer, first of all, Mrs. Nguyen. I know that multiple folks have flagged that concern, but I would think that the requirement is a reasonable one for that exact situation, where if the renter in an ADU were not able to have, for whatever reason, direct access to the homeowner who is blocking them in, there could be some concerns about, well, the idea of tandem parking sounds great in terms of efficiency. As somebody who shared one long tandem parking space with roommates that I lived with, 3 of them, it was still difficult with all of us in the same apartment to coordinate the moving of cars. So for people in 2 separate units, I don't think we should overlook that challenge in deciding how to recommend a final ordinance regarding the tandem parking provision. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. So I appreciate the continuation of the conversation, and particularly the opportunity to address any and all questions that come up, because I think that's the healthy part of this process, is that we can propose amendments and we can address issues that may have been overlooked in the process leading up to this point, or that surface at any point in the process, and also understand that people sort of come in and out of the conversation at different times. So I just wanted to mention 2 things. One, thank you to Ms. Nguyen and the Planning Department for compiling a lot of information on the city website. And I know for folks at home who might be going right from the BevCam stream to the website, it can be a little difficult to navigate to. Some of the subpages don't pop up in the most intuitive way. So wondered if we could just get a little direction to the best way to find the ADU resources specifically, because I know there's sort of some history there, some different versions of proposals that were considered. I think recordings of at least one of the public meetings a while back, and sort of can see whether something came up at some point and was discussed and did or didn't make it in as a result of that conversation, to just get that reassurance of sort of how the process has gone, and give people the opportunity to raise anything else that's there. So that's one thing, just sort of the point to the website. And then on the variance issue, and to some extent the level of restriction on requiring additional parking for an ADU. One of the ways that I think about both of those, that as we think about potentially working on some language, and I definitely do volunteer to help with wordsmithing if that's helpful. As we think about some potential language that could maybe be ready in time for the planning board's next hearing in October, so that we as a council could get the planning board's opinion on any particular potential language and still move through this process in a timely fashion, that we seem to be on track, where we're sort of being deliberate enough that everyone has a chance to weigh in, and also see something achievable soon. One of the things that I think about in crafting that language is just the equity between different types of households in the city and the different uses of space in the city. So to my mind, the comparison is not what special permissions are we going to give to encourage ADUs. I would love to be having that conversation, but I don't think we're having that conversation at this point, and I'm okay with that. But what we're really talking about is, can someone who wants to use a space in the city to house someone who's looking to rent, do they have the same rights to do that as someone who is just looking to expand their own personal use of existing space? And if we don't treat those two circumstances equitably, then I think we're really telling renters or potential renters in our community that they don't have sort of as much weight when it comes to being residents of our city, being contributors to our city. And I want us to be really, really careful about that. So that's different than expanding, if I think we should be talking about other ways to encourage ADUs and make them accessible. But when it comes to variances, when it comes to that parking, if you have a house with 3 related adults who are all drivers, or roommates who are all on the same lease, they sort out how to use a driveway. They may park in the street, they may park in the driveway. But we've ensured that the lot has enough space for their cars, and they decide if that's a situation that they want to live in. I would encourage us, as we make more housing available through ADUs, to make that as accessible for folks who are in an ADU and primary residence, just as much as in other types of multifamily housing and single-family housing with multiple drivers. And same with variances. If I could build a garage on my property under certain circumstances to house my car, even if I have to ask for some relief in order to do that because of the hardship of starting in a non-conforming space, I would love for us to extend that same possibility to housing a person in that same space. So as we think about sort of tweaking some of that language as we go along, that's the kind of equity point I would love to keep in mind.
Thank you, Councilor Bowen. Before we go to Councilor Rotundo, Ms. Nguyen, I don't know if you wanted to just offer for those following along, best spot for them to look online for the information that's there about this process and the ADU proposed ordinance as well.
Sure, and I'll clarify, and this was mentioned at the last meeting, but we did have this was the result of a year-long study process with the MAPC, our regional planning agency, between 2020 and 2022. We had 2 public meetings that were both held via online forums, given the timing, and a city resident-led task force that supported the project, and a survey, that QR code that's been active for collecting feedback and surveys. Since on May 5th, we had a public meeting here in City Hall to talk about the results of that study and what we were looking to do with the ordinance and talk about a draft ordinance. So those are some of the public forums that we were talking about. The easiest way, and we try to encourage people to do this, is to use the search function or the I'd like to. But if you enter ADU in search on the Beverly website, and a couple of different things come up, but they bring you to either a specific document or that page, which is the accessory dwelling unit parentheses ADU ordinance. I was just testing it out and navigating, and it appeared I got to a dead link. So although it works on my computer, I'm not sure if it was working on my phone, but the other option to get to it, if you go to the planning department website and then plans and studies, and then zoning projects and amendments, the accessory dwelling unit ordinance is one of the zoning projects listed under that heading. So that's kind of 3 navigation steps in, which was an attempt to make it more clear and easier to find than just having everything on one page.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nguyen, for that. And thanks for that question, Councilor Bowen. That's helpful for those of us watching at home and also here in the room. Councilor Rotundo, I saw your hand.
You just answered my question, so I don't have to ask. I was asking specifically is the robust conversation that Mr. Cosmo had reference to, and she just answered it all with the different forums and things like that. So all my question's been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. We've had several of those this evening where the speaker has just anticipated what was in the next person's head.
There you go. Thank you.
So, councilors, we'll do a little more discussion here tonight, recognizing that this is not our final opportunity to discuss this, nor will we be voting this evening because we're awaiting, of course, the recommendation from the planning board. I'm going to draw this to a close within the next couple of minutes, 10 or fewer, depending on how much we have to say, in recognition of the fact that I know we have still a presentation from our solicitor's office and some other business, and because this is not our final opportunity to discuss, nor our final vote this evening. So are there other questions, comments, or discussion, though, from members of the council this evening? Are there any final comments from members of the public who may not have gotten to speak but who wish to speak in this public hearing? Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion of this conversation, refer that back to the Committee on Legal Affairs. As I said, what the next steps in the process involve the council receiving a recommendation from our planning board, which will be part of our then information that we will take as we continue our conversation. And as Councilor Bowen alluded to, move forward in the process with next steps and ultimately a decision. Thank you, councilors. Thank you very much, Ms. Nguyen. Thank you, members of the public, for your time, your comments, your attention, both those in the room and those who are following along on BevCam. Mr. Berry, if you wouldn't mind sending your questions to the city clerk, then we can disseminate those, and also that will help in terms of further information gathering as well. Councilors, I would entertain a motion just to take a 5-minute recess.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll take a 5-minute recess to get ourselves set for the next item. Thank you, everybody. I know and have not forgotten that we do have a presentation from the city solicitor's office as well. I just conferred with Assistant Solicitor Old Mixon, so what I'm about to propose is also okay with her. So I would entertain a motion to take the agenda out of order so we can go to communications from other city officers and boards, follow through to the end. I'd like to break for subcommittee so that we have folks who are waiting for subcommittee very patiently and have that opportunity to do that so that they can go home, and then we'll return for reports from subcommittee and the report from the solicitor's office. So could I have a motion to take the agenda out of order?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. Let's go to communications from other city officers and boards, please, Ms. Kent.
Order number 236 from the city clerk for approval for city employees to work as tally clerks for the 2023 elections.
This is possible for us to approve on the floor if there's a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. Thank you to our clerk's office for the work they're already doing on our election with early voting happening right now.
Order number 237 from the Community Preservation Committee, fiscal year 2024 proposed CPA budget.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs to set a public hearing.
Order number 238, the city clerk, license renewal application for John DaVincio to sell Christmas trees.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs. My reaction was just that it's already the time of year to think about selling Christmas trees. It's going so fast.
Order number 239 from President Flowers, a letter regarding section 8-5 of our city charter, review of ordinances.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 240 from Councilors Houseman and Rand, a letter on behalf of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the National Grid Regional Transmission Reliability Project.
Councilors, I would entertain a motion to receive this and place it on file. This is the report that the councilors referenced earlier.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. Thank you, Councilors Rand and Houseman, for your work with the committee, but also for this written report to help inform the rest of the council. Let's go to communications, applications, and petitions. Ms. Kent.
Order number 241 from the National Grid, petition 307-56481, Elliott Street, to install one SO stub pole and stub guy on the northwest corner of the intersection between County Way and Elliott Street.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services to set a public hearing.
Order number 242 from National Grid, petition 307-56481, County Way, to install a new pole and anchor on the intersection of the Northern Avenue and County Way.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services, also to set a public hearing. We'll keep Order 282 from 2022 under unfinished business from a previous meeting. And we can go to motions and orders. All three are available for final passage this evening.
Order number 182. Deliveries, no store or place of business shall accept delivery of any item for sale between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. This section shall not apply to deliveries made to a store or place of business that holds a valid vicular license. Violators of this section shall be subject to a fine of $50 for each violation. For purposes of this section, each separate delivery should be deemed a separate offense. In the event of delivery or several items or articles at one time by one delivery, only one delivery shall be deemed to have taken place.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Councilor Feldman, this was your order. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes, sure. This, I know we had a long discussion about this ordinance at the previous meeting, and I did follow up on some of the concerns that I heard from other counselors, and worked again with the solicitor's office, and a special thank you to Assistant Solicitor Beth Oldmixon. And we're really comfortable with where it's at in its language, and also I'm just really hopeful it can be passed tonight and supported, because it would really mean a huge quality of life change for my constituents. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilor Feldman. As I said, this is available for final passage. Is there a motion to approve Order 182 tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Counselor Bowen.
Thank you. Just briefly, I appreciate the work that's gone into the ordinance, and still don't plan to support the final passage for the same reasons as last time, just given the breadth. We looked for whether there are ways to focus in specifically on noise. Didn't feel like that was feasible to propose as an amendment to the language as is, and so looking forward to seeing how this plays out and reviewing whether there are any other impacts or if it's able to have that targeted impact in the neighborhood intent.
Thank you, Counselor Bowen. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. That carries 7-2. Thank you, counselors, and thank you, Counselor Feldman, for your work, and Assistant Solicitor Old Mixon as well for your work on that. Then Order 196, also available for final passage this evening. Ms. Kent.
Order number 196, Section 270-66, Downtown Beverly Parking District. The fee for on-street parking regulation devices in the Downtown Beverly Parking District will be up to $1 per hour. This fee shall not apply or be enforced against any passenger vehicle or motorcycle displaying a veteran, disabled veteran, National Guard, Award Medal veteran, Gold Star family, or Medal of Liberty plate issued by the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles, any comparable out-of-state plate issued by a similar government agency, or a veteran's parking sticker issued by the City of Beverly Veterans Service Department.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Counselor Rotundo, Counselor Crowley, this is your order. Counselor Rotundo.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to make a couple of statements, just because the fact that a lot of the phone calls received with the misunderstanding of how the process works. A lot of the veterans thought that there was already an effect. The fact is, after this vote, if it's to be passed, it takes effect. People need to, veterans who are eligible, if they don't have a license plate, they're to go to the Veteran Service Officer office, which is up on Herrick Street. I believe it's 93 Herrick Street. It's the blue bungalow to the left of the hospital. They would need to bring their Form DD-214. I promise you I have no idea because I was not a veteran, but that form, as well as their state driver's license and the registration and license plate, so they're able to give it to the parking clerk enforcement office, so they are able to read it in the reader. And if they don't, there is a sticker here that they'll get. It's similar to what you would get from the Lynch Park, and it will be affixed to their car. So that, if this is to pass tonight, would take effect, I believe, immediately. Is that correct? Unless 24-hour,
After the hold.
after the hold of 24 hours, correct? So it would be technically in a couple of days. Correct? I just like I said, because it's just because of the conversation continually coming to me, I just want to make sure that they're understanding and they're not going, if they have a license plate, that they're parking in the parking lot and then they get a ticket. And that's sort of how the conversation was coming about. So procedurally, it still could be a couple of more days away before this happens. And that's, just wanted to state that. So I hope it is supported and passed by this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Rotundo. Counselor Crowley, anything to add?
I asked for the same thing, as far as with myself being a veteran. I think this is great for all of our veterans in the city, and I appreciate everybody passing this. This would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve Order 196?
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 9-0, and that is for final passage this evening. Thank you, Counselors Rotundo and Crowley, for your work on that. And Order 197.
Order 197, Section 270-41, parking prohibited at all times. Upon the following streets or highways or parts thereof, parking is hereby prohibited at all times. On Woodland Avenue on both sides from Green Street to Livingston Ave.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Counselor Rotundo, this is also your order. Any other comments on this one?
No, except for what I've said, it really is in direct response to the safety issues along Woodland Ave, in direct response to the shutting down of the Hall-Whitaker Bridge. I hope for the support of this as well. The neighbors are in favor of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there a motion to approve Order 197 this evening?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0, and that is also for final passage. Thank you, Counselor Rotundo, for your work on that. I would entertain a motion to take a break for some committee work.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. So this is a break for committee work. Anything that's more substantive than about 15 minutes or so, we'll schedule separate committee meetings, reminder to our chairs. We'll have legal affairs stay here on BevCam, finance on the bench, and public services in the committee room. Call to order Legal Affairs Committee. Sorry about that, Kim. We're ready. Okay, call to order the Legal Affairs Committee of the City Council. I'm going to take up order number 237 first, which we just received. Sorry, hang on here. And that is the Community Preservation Fiscal Year 2024 Proposed CPA Budget. I would accept a motion to set a public hearing, recommend that the City Council set a public hearing for October 2nd at 7:30 PM.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So there'll be a public hearing on October 2nd if the full council approves it. Okay, and then order number 238 is a license renewal application for John D. Vincenzo to sell Christmas trees. Any questions or comments from committee members? Okay, I would accept a motion to recommend the application be granted.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Okay, and then we have order number 239, which is a letter regarding section 8.5 of the city charter, which is all pertains to the review of ordinances. So we have in front of us a tentative set of legal affairs subcommittee meetings. Monday, October 2nd being our first one at 6 PM, in which we will make plans and discuss ordinance review. And I believe we can just hold this order within our committee for that time. Mr. Dole, is there any recommendation on your end that I should be aware of in terms of the solicitor's department?
Well, it's a little strange, the language in the charter. I mean, however you wish, you or Council President Flowers wish to constitute this, but it's rather vague. It's just that the council shall provide for a review and then issue a report. So whether the council, I don't think the council needs to vote on this order to approve the order to do this. I think, you can just set those, this will sit in the Legal Affairs Subcommittee. I don't think this needs to be voted on. There's no, it's not as formal as a charter review process. And it's even, to determine if there's any amendments that may be required. It's a rather, it's not a very hard requirement. So, but I think at least for the purposes of that first meeting, that can be a discussion of what the goals are.
Okay. In order to keep that on our agenda, do we need to have this order constantly on our
I think
agenda?
for the purposes of fulfilling the open meeting law,
Okay.
I think it should be Order 239. So if someone needs to go back into tonight's agenda to actually pull this,
Got it.
they'll be able to see what the purposes are.
Okay.
And if anything, without I'm sorry, not to offend the drafting of the agenda item, but I may provide some. I know we try to keep it minimal and not have a paragraph about what it's about, but I think maybe I could help build out. So, like we heard tonight, somebody looks at the agenda and really knows what it is.
Ordinance review.
With reference to the charter sections and, what the purposes are. Just a little bit longer of a run-on sentence maybe to help.
Okay, perfect.
So.
Okay.
And I can at least tell you that our office has for quite some time now a working document, at least for part one, which is the administrative legislation portion of the ordinances. We keep a running document of ideas for suggested amendments to that, just the administrative side. And then when you get in the legislative side, it's a little different because you have zoning, wetlands protection, parking. I mean,
It's a little more tricky.
Yeah, and I do know, at least under that stuff, I know the animal ordinances are currently being reviewed by the Board of Health and Animal Control Officer Matt Lipinski with our office. I've been involved with the engineering department about the stormwater management ordinance. I've had conversations with Harbor Master Dickman about some amendments to the waterways ordinance. So, and then there's some other things like zoning and wetlands management that I think we could just kind of put to the side given the Concom and it's getting late. And there's even planning and departments like that, some of the statutory requirements for those sort of ordinances. So.
Right. Well, I think your, knowledge of all of those different departments will be.
Yeah, and I can be a little bit more formal, but I know we're constantly, I don't want to say fiddling, but we're constantly trying to improve the how these ordinances are drafted. So, and when we do get a chance to do like a planned amendment, we try to do the cleanup while we're there too. So,
yeah.
But I'll try to put something together, just so we can brief you about what the ongoing review process to amendments, so that the subcommittee doesn't have to really waste their time for the purposes of the charter review.
Excellent. So we can probably plan on and expect on October 2nd that's going to be part of the.
I can come in, I can at least give without chewing up too much time, the things that I know that there are departments, boards, commissions that are currently reviewing those ordinances that are usually very specific, whether they're the animal control laws, stormwater, like I said, the stormwater management ordinance, those sort of things. And hopefully, not to dictate how you manage the review, but if there are little things that you've heard over the years people complain about, this is really it's like the little tiny things that pop up with constituent complaints, and we can try to clean up. And like I said, with the administrative portion of it, we've done a significant amount of cleanup to try to remove some redundancies, correct language, and things like that. So
I think as a committee, and what people, the rest of the council and people at home can understand, is that on Monday, October 2nd at 6 p.m., the Legal Affairs Subcommittee will begin this process alongside and with the Solicitor's Office and we will sort of, have a general discussion about what you've already been working on through the solicitor's office, but also sort of lay out a plan for moving forward through this process. The ordinance review doesn't require that we make amendments. It's really just, it's a review.
And
so.
and we're here almost every week with, ordinance amendments. It's a much easier, absent a change, and I hope I don't downplay this too much, but if we want to add a new, like a metered parking zone, like something like that requires a public hearing. Some of these others, they just don't. So we don't have to try to rewrite the whole book of ordinances this time around, but this is at least, there's obviously things we come in and try to do cleanup all the time, but if you or any of the other counselors have things that have been kind of a rock in your shoe for a few years about a particular ordinance, this is an opportunity to do it.
And so I hope that we can sort of discuss our approach to gathering that information outside of what we already have. Any questions from committee members on at least the October 2nd meeting?
None for me.
Okay, thank you for your help, and this order number 239 will stay in the Legal Affairs Committee for foreseeable future till we get through that process. And that is all we have on our agenda. I would accept a motion to adjourn the Legal Affairs Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 9:16.
Welcome back, city government fans. Thank you to, on a serious note, thank you to, we had members of the public who were here waiting to meet with our subcommittee on public services about some appointments. I know they've just gone, but when they watch this footage later, thank you for your patience. I know it's a long meeting, and so thank you for hanging in with us. We are going to, before reports from committees, we're going to circle back around. We have one other presentation on our agenda this evening, and that is from the City Solicitor's Office with an update on the status of House Bill number 37477, the city's home rule petition regarding amendments to the 1995 City of Beverly Home Rule Charter. And Assistant Solicitor Beth Oldmixon is here with that presentation for us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Thanks for your patience as well.
Sure, no problem. Happy to help. So I'm here to provide the council with an update on the status of the home rule petition relative to amendments to the charter as reflected in Order 65, which you approved on March 6, 2023, if you remember those days. On March 9th, the mayor presented to Senator Lovely and Representative Paracella the home rule petition and also included a red line version of the city's 1995 home rule charter reflecting the amendments that were proposed in that petition. Shortly thereafter, at the request of the Office of Representative Paracella, the Solicitor's Office provided Representative Paracella with a letter summarizing the amendments and also a detailed chart of those amendments. The petition was assigned Bill number H3747 and referred to the Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government. The committee conducted a hearing on June 20th, at which Solicitor Williams, Representative Paracella, and Senator Lovely testified. The mayor also submitted written testimony in support of the bill. It was made clear at that time to the committee that ballots must be sent to the printer by no later than October 2nd. On July 17th, the bill was reported favorably and referred to the Committee on House Steering, Policy, and Scheduling. On July 31st, the bill was placed on orders of the day and referred to the House Committee on Bills in the third reading, and a third reading was ordered on July 31st. On September 6th, the Committee on the third reading provided, through Representative Paracella, a floor amendment that basically was reformatting the home rule petition. The substance was not impacted. The amendment essentially accepted all the red line changes to the charter and inserted the entire amended charter for approval into the petition, with the exception of the sections requiring voter ratification, which are carved out separately. You may recall that the original petition was in a line-by-line description of the changes as recommended by the Collins Center. Over the next 48 hours, the Solicitor's Office reviewed the floor amendment to confirm that it accurately mirrored the charter amendments included in the petition as filed. On September 12th, the committee provided to the city a final version of the floor amendment, and as authorized by Order 65, the mayor provided a letter of support for the floor amendment, and the floor amendment was assigned a new bill number H4093. It's like this is a PBS special, right? So the House passed and engrossed H4093 on September 14th, and the papers were filed with the Senate on September 18th. Senator Lovely's office has advised us that the bill has been placed in orders of the day on the Senate calendar. It's our understanding that Senate Council will prioritize their review of the bill, and it's also our understanding that no Senate committee will review the bill. It'll just be reviewed by the whole Senate. Once passed by the Senate, the bill will then be presented to the governor for signing, hopefully in time to get the ballots printed by October 2nd. So I apologize, I don't generally read, but I wanted to make sure I got all the details and dates right, so that's why it was read like that. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy.
Thank you very much, Ms. Oldmixon, for that helpful overview of the process up to this point. Councilors, are there questions or comments for Ms. Oldmixon? Councilor Hostman.
I just want to give my appreciation to the Solicitor's Office and Assistant Solicitor Oldmixon for her summary, concise, to the point. And I guess the only question I would have is there any indication from Senator Lovely's office of optimism or otherwise that the deadline will be met, or are they non-committal?
I'd say optimism, and the mayor's had some conversations as well, but I have not heard any fears that it won't get done. So everyone is aware of the deadline and the need to get this done.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, were you hoping to jump in there?
I think she nailed it.
All right, thank you. Thank you,
I'm
Counselor.
gonna print that recording.
Just you can replay it on a loop.
Yeah, exactly.
Counselor St. Hilaire.
I guess my only concern is that we've got an election coming up in a matter of, I don't know, less than 2 months, and the voters are really basically unaware that this might even be on the ballot. Is there a communications plan, or what do we do when we hear on that? Whose job is that?
So I'm not 100% sure on that. I know it will, so the ballots will be printed, there's questions, and there will be a description. I'm not nailing it this time, sorry.
Mr. Mayor. You're still nailing it. Yeah.
Yes, she absolutely hit that last question out of the park. You should have played mom ball. So we've asked these same questions. If you think about it, with a state ballot question, you get the Secretary of State's red book, you get the pro and the con, and you get to try to work through it. So we have reached out to, I think it was Secretary of State's elections. We've talked with a couple of folks at the state about just how is that information beyond whatever the clerk's office does supposed to be, disseminated? How do people get it? And so I would say to you that now knowing that, well, first off, that we're up to September 18th. Is that today?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. And we're still waiting for a Senate, engrossment so they can send it our way. We will be talking again this week with those folks at the state to really nail down just who has the obligation and then who has the ability to share information out. Because, how much of it do we, first of all, who is it? It may well be that it falls to the city clerk's office. And then it's about sharing with traditional media, putting on the website, what else is allowed to be done in terms of pushing information out. Because you're right, we've had that same concern as we've been pushing for the legislation to get done for some time. That has been our drumbeat. And we need to know that these are going to be on the ballot. We need, because that's what you're getting to, so the questions that are
Right, I mean,
there.
these questions ultimately will have a big impact on our city government, and typically, there's a no campaign or a yes campaign, or people that agree with it or oppose it that get involved in a campaign. And here we are, September 18th, and we don't even know if it's going to be on the ballot. None of that has had an opportunity to play out, so that's my concern. We are where we are.
What was that filing date? March? Yeah. So it's, it's been a priority of ours, and here we sit, and hopefully it'll be done this week, and, we'll be able to answer those questions for ourselves of just how is that information going to be put out, and how many different ways can people access it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mayor. Other questions or comments from members of the council for the solicitor's office? I have a question, if that's okay. I think it might be sort of an obvious answer, but if we don't have an approval in time to print these ballots, what happens next in the process? Does it have to wait for the next regular scheduled election?
I don't have an answer for that. We have kicked that question around, but have decided to focus all of our efforts on trying to get this passed in time for printing the ballots for October 2nd.
That seems like a good place to focus the efforts for now. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, just kidding.
Don't put it in the universe.
Oh, Counselor Rand.
Thank you. I do have a question. I'm wondering, do we have the ability to, hire someone like the Collins Center to sort of develop the information that we're sending out on either side. I'm just thinking, like, if this has to have a quick turnaround, is there somebody that we can say, we're gonna hire you to make this happen?
Sure, I also don't have an answer to that question, but that's definitely something that we can look into and see if that's a possibility.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Solicitor. Any other questions from members of the council? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Assistant Solicitor Olmixon. Thanks for your patience also in coming back around to that presentation, and thanks for the update on where things stand with that process as well. Ms. Kent, let's go to reports from committees, please.
Order number 227, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a reappointment for John LaLatcher to serve as Beverly's Police Chief, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this reappointment.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Questions or comments on this? Oh, sorry. Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the...
I have some questions.
All right.
If I may.
You may.
I'm not sure exactly to whom to address these questions. If I may. So I'll let either the solicitor's office or the mayor, to whomever this should be addressed. The contract provides for indemnification against any civil tort for acts or omissions and so forth. Is this provision or its corollary in the present contract for the chief? Or in other words, is this a new provision or is this just a carryover from the existing provision?
I don't have the existing contract in front of me. I would presume that, like, that my understanding is that this was effectively the same contract with some changes with dates and compensation. If you could give me a few minutes, I have the prior, or the current contract rather, saved on my F drive on my computer. I can say, at least as to the issue of indemnification, that Maya, our insurer, under our law enforcement legal liability coverage, has accepted, has agreed to defend and indemnify members of the City of Beverly Police Department, including the chief. And that is how Chief LaLasher is being represented right now. His counsel is counsel selected by Maya pursuant to the that insurance policy. So that policy does have coverage for not only the defense, but also the coverage of the claim. So.
And
I'm sorry. I just wanted to explain what you just got in your hands, Councilor Husband. Councilor Bowen had a hard copy of the prior existing contract. So if it's helpful to have it to reference, Councilor Husband or Solicitor Dole, we have it here in hard copy, thanks to Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. Yes, through you, Madam President.
Yes.
Council President. It does appear that it is in the existing contract, and that the provision relating to professional liability is also in the existing contract. So regarding the controversy in court at the moment, this provision would apply should there be an adverse decision on that matter?
Right now, the insurance policy applies. So I'm hesitant to give a legal discussion about the interplay between that contract provision and our insurance coverage, but what I can say is we do have insurance coverage right now that is paying for the defense and does include indemnification in the event that any member of the police department is found liable, with some exceptions about conduct that I don't think apply to Chief LaLasher's litigation. But you know, unfortunately, sometimes members of the police department are sued in court, and similar in the past, Maya has accepted the defense and indemnification of that officer under our law enforcement legal liability protection coverage.
And so the provision regarding indemnification applies not simply to the chief of police, but to all law enforcement officials in the city?
That policy does. We do not have, the chief because the chief is not part of civil service, this contract controls the chief's employment relationship with the city. And that does have that indemnification language in there. We don't have employment contracts with other members of the police department. But what I can say is all the members of the police department, again, with some exceptions that I would have to get into a tort handbook about what kind of conduct by public employees covered under different sorts of municipal liability policies. I can say Maya has accepted to defend and indemnify the chief for the purposes of this litigation under this policy.
And does that policy extend to other employees of the city, or is it limited to members of the police force?
We have a number of different policies. We have multiple policies that cover different types of coverage for the airport. We have three-ring binders of different policies issued by Maya for different aspects of how a very large municipality does business. But at least for the purposes of this claim, that's a particular policy that is providing coverage right now.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Husman. Thank you, Councillor Bowen, for the hard copy there of the existing contract. Are there other questions or comments, further discussion on this one? Councillor Rand.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that, first of all, say thank you to Mayor Cahill and Chief Lasher for taking their time today to spend time with the Legal Affairs Committee today as we discuss this order. And, you know, there were definitely some positive highlights in terms of the last 10 years of Chief Lasher's service in our community. 9 new officers in our police force, a new police station, the community impact unit is been implemented in that time frame, along with the medical partnership with Middleton and the domestic violence advocate, and some other concrete examples of, you know, general signs that morale has improved in our police department, and I thought those were all really great highlights. I'm looking forward to hearing more about where, you know, where the department kind of can go from here, and I'm just thankful that we got that time to ask those questions today and hear some of the good things that have been happening. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rand. Councillor Bowen, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, thank you. I also appreciated that opportunity to hear a little bit more about the chief's service to date, the current term, and plans for any extension. Some of the questions that I had going into that meeting, I think still remain a little bit unanswered for me around just the particular timing of this contract extension. And so, you know, was pleased to hear in the Legal Affairs meeting that it's not out of the ordinary for a contract to be extended before, or a reappointment to be extended before its term is up. But in this case also felt like there are a couple of points, you know, January would be a year from the contract being done, and it sounds like that's a customary time to start renegotiating. I don't know that that's you know, a requirement, but sort of a custom. Then the contract actually being up in January of 2025. And then thinking about the way appointments work for public services, needing to be a minimum 3-year appointment or a maximum 5-year appointment. Can understand that there would be sort of a trigger point in May 2024 if we wanted to have an extension of at least 3 years through what would be the chief's mandatory retirement age. So I was sort of coming into it with those points in mind as points when a reappointment might be proposed and come before us for that kind of discussion. Haven't really heard a particular reason for moving that timeline up further, and so at this point, you know, not out of any sort of specific concerns around, you know, issues that may be arising in the moment. Though that timing obviously makes the conversation a little bit more sort of public, not out of that reason, but just out of sort of respect for timelines and process and the role that both the administration and the council play in accountability for city roles. I haven't gotten to a point of comfort with approving this early in the process, an extension of this length, but just wanted to sort of explain where I'm at in that process, and again, that it's sort of around not fully understanding the timeline or getting to that level of comfort that it's necessary at this point in front of us today. That's it from me.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Other questions or comments on this one from members of the council? All right. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. That carries 8-1. And thank you, councillors, for that discussion. Thank you, Chief Lasher, for hanging with us for this entire evening. And for, as Councillor Wren referenced, to both you and the mayor for your time at Legal Affairs this evening as well. Ms. Kent.
Order number 237, the Committee on Legal Affairs, whom regard the matter regarding Community Preservation Fiscal Year 2024 proposed CPA budget, has set a public hearing for October 2nd at 7:30 p.m.
The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. To set that public hearing, I'm sorry. That's what we just did. Thank you.
Order number 238, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a license renewal application for John DeVincenzo to sell Christmas trees. Recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 226, Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a fund transfer of $1 million from the road resurfacing account into the roads and sidewalk capital account to pay for resurfacing when required. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 224, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding an appointment for William Cosawan, 7 Fairview Street, Danvers, to serve as Town of Danvers representative of the Beverly Airport Commission. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 225, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding an appointment for Kevin Gannon, 15 Everett Street, to serve on the Veterans Advisory Committee. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 228, Committee on Public Services, to whom referred the matter regarding National Grid Petition 308-27452 Valley Street. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the petition be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 241, the Committee on Public Services, to whom for the matter of petition 307-56481 Elliott Street, to set a public hearing for October 2nd, 7:15 p.m.
All those in favor of setting that public hearing as recommended for our October 2nd meeting, 7:15 p.m. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 242, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding petition 307-56481 County Way, to set a public hearing on October 2nd at 7:20 p.m.
All those in favor of setting that public hearing as recommended. Oh, Councillor Feldman, sorry.
Just one note to that. I can't remember whether it was that one or the one before, but there was a map missing from that one. Okay, from the 242.
Okay.
And we've requested it from National Grid.
Thank you.
Okay.
Prior to the public hearing.
I
Thank
will
you.
get in touch with them tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Feldman and the Public Services Subcommittee. So we'll make sure to get that map included and disseminated to councillors from National Grid. And so all those in favor of setting the public hearing is recommended for October 2nd. This was at 7:20 PM, is that right?
7:20, yep.
All those in favor,
I'll
aye.
get the map.
Thank you. That carries 9-0 with the addition of the map.
That's all I have.
Well, thank you, councilors. Are there any announcements or reminders from members of the council that anyone would like to share at this point? Just one update that we realized we ought to share, since we're on BevCam here. Folks at home, if you're watching on cable, you may have already noticed that you're no longer watching on channel 99, you're watching on channel 6. That's now the BevCam government channel if you're watching on cable. And so if you're watching and you're watching on channel 6, tell your friends and neighbors. If you're watching streaming, tell your friends and neighbors that if they watch on cable, they should watch on channel 6. And that is a good time to remind me to also say thank you again to Kim in the BevCam booth for being with us this evening, making sure that our meetings are accessible. And with that, Ms. Kent.
Early voting is going on this week?
Oh, thank you. Important reminder, yes, from our city clerk's office, as we referenced sort of quickly earlier in the meeting, early voting is happening, and this is for the mayoral preliminary election, which is September 26th. If you are not early voting, you can come in this week, and the clerk's office team is here, and you can cast your ballot. Thank you to Ms. Kent, Ms. Dixon, and the whole team in the clerk's office for their work on that as well. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That's 9-0, and we are adjourned. Good night, everyone.